You're listening to The Safety and the Sportswriter on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good evening, everybody. We are back Thursday night, the 13th of May. My God, we're halfway through the month of May already. Getting ready to talk to you about the world of sports. It's The Safety and the Sportswriter with Nate and Nate Joe. How you doing tonight, Nate?
I'm doing well, sir. Thank you for asking.
Well, we have a lot to get to today. We have Bob Picozzi, kind of a sportscasting legend in the state of Connecticut. Broadcasted UConn for years, was the editor of TNH, and we're going to talk a little baseball with him when he comes on around 7:20. Talk a little Yankees and Mets, and what the heck is going on with the game we all grew up watching. We don't know anymore. So we're going to do a lot of baseball tonight. But we still have a lot to get over, and we were talking before we came on the air, and before we get into basketball, the feedback is coming on the Tim Tebow return to football, and it is just ridiculous. First of all, you got people trying to make it into a Colin Kaepernick thing, and I'm like, does Colin Kaepernick want to play tight end? And you know, the whole thing is, can we move on from Kaepernick? He got screwed. We all know he got screwed. But there's nothing we can do about it now. There's a slew of young quarterbacks coming in right now. And why is it so important to get this 33, 34-year-old quarterback back on the field? I don't get that. The other thing is, and we talked the other night, both of you and I think that Tebow's worth the experiment. He knows the coach knows him. The coach, during his college days, came up with specific plays that made him successful, a Heisman Trophy winner, national champion. Why wouldn't you take a chance on this kid, especially with the fact that you can't ever say anything about his character?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really see what the problem is and why people are freaking out. It's not like he's been sitting on his couch for the last couple of years. He's been playing pro sports, and this guy was one of the best football players, if not one of the best football players of all time in college football. So, if he can help your team, why not give him a shot, especially when he's probably going to play for the minimum and he's going to have to earn his way onto the club. They're not just putting him on the roster because they like him. They're giving him a shot to make the team and see if he's better than Ben Koyak, who's their current backup tight end. And my guess is Tim Tebow's probably better. I haven't seen him catch a whole lot, but, I bet he can do it.
Well, yeah, he's an athlete, and he understands about route trees. He understands about a lot of stuff from the quarterback angle of it. I mean, he's not the first quarterback. He's not the first quarterback to change position and become a success. Julian Edelman comes to mind. There's been a lot of guys that came out as quarterbacks and had to switch positions to make it in the pros, including a couple that became safeties. Nolan Cromwell from Kansas way back in the 70s. Became an all-pro safety for the Rams. So, it's not like it hasn't been done before. So
I don't know many guys from the 70s, but Logan Thomas was the quarterback at Virginia Tech and came into the league as a quarterback and, gave up on that pretty quickly. Probably should have changed positions before the draft, but he did what he did. And now he's the starting star tight end for the Washington football team.
Exactly.
He's a red zone threat and one of the best pass catching tight ends in the NFC. So, it can be done.
All right. So we want to get a little bit to basketball before Bob comes in. Like I say, he's going to be coming on at around 7:20. We started the other night looking at the teams in the NBA that we think are, pretenders, fakers, whatever. Had some big some changes the other night because all of a sudden, we have the Hawks who are in the playoffs. We have the Heat who are in the playoffs. We have the Knicks who are in the playoffs. The Knicks first time in, 6-7 years? So big doings in the Northeast here. The Celtics are still outside. First of all, the Hawks, Heat, and Knicks are basically same record. The Heat, of course, we know, great run last year. The Hawks, we talked about it the other night. Has your opinion changed on any of the three?
Not really. We went through the Eastern Conference, on our last show and kind of talked about what we thought would happen with the playoffs and with those teams. And obviously with Jaylen Brown being done for the season, the Celtics are in trouble. They got beat last night by the Cleveland Cavaliers, gave up 30 points to Kevin Love. I mean, that's not a good look. So, I think, we broke down the East pretty good. And I think, I see the Celtics struggling to even keep into the playoff race. I mean, I know they're at 7th right now, but I could see the Wizards moving up like we talked about, and I could see the Celtics probably dropping out as they're, only a 500 ball club right now, and it's going to be tough without Jaylen Brown. So, my focus at this point is, pretty much on the West and, what's going to happen with the play-in situation.
All right. Well, we started with the Jazz the other night. You like the Jazz. You like their overall look. You like what they've done this year, especially with Mike Conley being the quarterback of that team, and the coach and everything. So we know you're solid in the Jazz. What about the Suns? The Suns, who had such a good run in the bubble last year or last summer, and they also added somebody important at the point guard position, Chris Paul. So what do you think about the Suns?
Yeah, I do like the Jazz, but honestly, I don't really see the Jazz being able to, get deep in the playoffs. I don't see them reaching the finals in the Western Conference, to be honest with you. I really don't. They just don't have that superstar. I know they've been the most consistent team. I know that they're the best maybe team, out there right now. But in a 7-game series, when you have to go to somebody, Donovan Mitchell doesn't cut it for me. I'm sorry. I like the guy. I think he's a great player, but he's not a superstar, in my opinion. And to be honest, I like the Suns better than I like the Jazz, just because they have, first of all, Devin Booker, who drops almost 30 points a game. And they've got Chris Paul, who, averages almost 10 assists a game. So they've got a veteran leader in Chris Paul that'll, keep everybody ready and make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to. And then they've got Devin Booker, who can drop 40 points on any given evening.
What about the Clippers? The Clippers were the big disappointment of last year. Got the coach fired. They got Lou back in there coaching now. We know that he won't get in the way of anything they want to do. What do you think about the Clippers?
I don't really know. I don't really know what to think of the Clippers. I mean, they've had a decent season. They're in pretty good position considering everything else that's gone on. I mean, they've played pretty solid, but nothing's really changed for me from last year to this year. And me, I'm just not utterly sold on Paul George. He's good.
And he'll tell you that.
Yeah, he's an all-star, but
in his own money.
When he's playing against LeBron, I'll take LeBron every day. And, it's just going to come down to whether Kawhi Leonard can be enough and do what he did in Toronto, because that's the reason Toronto won that championship, was because they had Kawhi Leonard, and he played just as well as anybody down the stretch.
He did, but also that year, all the surrounding parts played well too. I mean, he made the great shot, and he was definitely their star. But Lowry, all those guys were just everybody came up big. And
I like that supporting cast in Toronto better than I like this supporting cast. I guess how I would like to phrase it.
I totally agree with you. The Nuggets, they lost their star. They're hanging on. I mean, they got a great center, but will he be enough?
I think people could be in trouble playing against the Nuggets. I mean, I know Jamal Murray's, missed, but I mean, Nikolai, he leads the team in every category. He leads the team in scoring. He leads the team in rebounds. He leads the team in assists. And he did even before Murray went down. And with Murray being out, Michael Porter Jr. has stepped up tremendously because he's had to. They've had to have a second option, second scoring option, and Porter's dropped 30 points in like 4 out of the last 7 games. And that's, that's showing you something there. when you can drop 30 points consistently. So, I think the Nuggets are still going to be a tough out, and I still give them a shot because they have the Joker, and they've got Porter Jr. who can help them out and be a guy that can step up with Murray being down.
The next team is my bracket buster, the Trailblazers. I don't know if they're disciplined enough to put together, 4 great series in a row. I don't know if they can do that kind of stuff and tame their games when they have to be. But for 7 games or for 4 wins over a 2-week span, with Dame and those guys, I could just see them getting on a hot streak and just, like I said, being the bracket buster.
Yeah, it all depends. If they get hot shooting and McCollum's healthy and Lillard's healthy, they can shoot their way past somebody. But, is this a team that can win a championship? I don't think so. I just don't think they have enough around Damian Lillard to win a championship. I think he's a superstar. I think he is a great player, but I don't know who is his, number 2. Is CJ McCollum, enough to get him over the hump and win a championship? I don't know. I just think they need another piece there, in my opinion.
I totally agree, but I think, if you match them up with the Suns, and all things being equal, and Lillard is hot and McCollum is hot, I think they could take the Suns out. I think they're just that wild card of a team nobody wants to face, and we're another team that's going to come up in a few minutes is the Mavericks. These are the teams where it could be bracket busters.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's just, I'm trying to think in terms of, who can win a title. And what I think is very interesting about the West is that I could see several of the bottom 4 seeds knocking out some of the top 4 seeds very easily. The Lakers, if LeBron comes back and he's healthy and they get on a roll, I could see them knocking off 1 or 2 teams, if not going all the way. And, I could see Golden State beating some of these teams as well. And taking several of these teams out if Steph Curry keeps doing what he's doing. So, it's kind of weird to say it, but I could see the top, 5 through 8 possibly taking down a 1 through 4, even in the first round.
If you look, all things being equal, when you look at these teams, because for years right now, the West has owned the talent. Is it starting to even up a little bit? When you look at the 1 through 8 in both divisions, at least the top 4 or 5 teams, could you see any of them, interchangeably being a finals matchup and giving us a good series? Say the Bucks went up against the Clippers, or the Sixers went up against the Nuggets, or whatever. Any combination of those top 5 teams in each conference.
Honestly, yeah, I could see. I'd probably. I know that Atlanta's in 4th place right now, and Miami's in 5. But I would swap those 2 teams and say, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, Milwaukee, and Miami. I'd take those 4 teams, any one of them, to make it all the way to the finals and to be able to put up a pretty decent fight against whoever they play. I think those teams are all very solid. And I think all 4 of those teams match up with the West Conference teams as well.
Because, that's for somebody like me who's kind of an outsider of the NBA. I'm not a big NBA fan. I started to get a little bit when we were talking about the bubble during the summer. I was a bigger fan of it back in the 70s when I was a little kid. And then in the 80s, I liked it. And I liked it through the Bull era. But then it kind of waned against me. And I think a lot of it had to do with all the talent migrating out west, away from me. You had the Knicks, Bulls, the Indianapolis, Boston. You had some good teams in the East to keep your attention. In Detroit, I call them an East Coast team. You had those, the Miami Heat. And so you had a reason to believe and have a pride in East Coast basketball. But once Jordan retired, it was like everybody went out west except for LeBron, who held the banner up for a long period of time. But other than that, it was like, why am I watching this when it's going to be a West Coast team?
Yeah, I mean, the West was definitely the stronger conference for a long time. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Especially when you talk about the dominance that the Warriors had for those years. I mean, I know LeBron was getting to the finals pretty much every year and took them out one year, but to do that was just amazing because the way that the Warriors were dominating the league, it was pretty fantastic. And then before that, the Spurs who dominated and won several titles, but also made it to the finals several times. So that's true. It was, but I see the talent evening back up. Milwaukee with Giannis staying there and signing that max contract, that was huge for the Eastern Conference, in my opinion. I mean, if he left and went to the Clippers or went to Dallas or some of the places that were courting him and trying to lure him away out of Milwaukee, I think that would have been bad news for the East. But him staying put and keeping the Bucks formidable, I think that the Sixers, the Nets, the Bucks, the Heat, they're just as good as anybody. And then if Jaylen Brown doesn't go down, the Celtics are right there too. And, what can you say about the Knicks this year? They've stepped up their game now that they actually have a coach.
Giannis staying is kind of the shocking feel-good story for the NBA because the fact of the matter is there's really nothing really attractive for someone. I mean, nothing against Milwaukee. Please, we want you guys listening to our show. I'm not going to try to insult Milwaukee.
Man, hey, I was born in Milwaukee, brah.
Okay, so but I mean, for someone who sits there and can go, let's see, I can go live in LA where girls are in bikinis and shorts all year long, or I can go where it's snow from October.
No. I honestly was shocked that he stayed there, and not just because of the weather, but also just the small market team, and being in the Eastern Conference and not having a ton of superstar power around him. I just thought he would go elsewhere to increase his brand, but he stayed put and was loyal to the team that was loyal to him. And I think there's something to be said for that. And Milwaukee's a really cool town, except for about 4 months, because you don't want to be there for the 4 months of winter, the 4 strong months, because there's a foot of snow on the ground the entire time.
The other thing I wanted to ask you before, we got Bob Picozzi coming up in about 3 minutes. So I want to keep it light and in and easy for when he gets on here. Steph Curry came into the league and he was kind of a breath of fresh air. He was a guy who played a totally different game. He was a small man in a big man's game. And then somewhere, and I don't know if it was the residue of Kevin Durant choosing to go to Golden State and become a part of that so he could get his ring, the tide turned against Curry. Public opinion outside of someone who really likes Curry or is a Golden State fan, a lot of people were taking shots at him. First of all, do you think that was fair? And secondly, do you think now the narrative of this year can make him back into the hero he was when he first came into the league?
Steph Curry's one of the best shooters I've ever seen. I want to start with that. Okay. I mean, this guy can shoot the ball like almost no one I've ever seen. He's like Reggie Miller, but a shorter, shooting stroke. And that's saying something. I mean, Reggie's one of the greatest shooters of all time, if not the greatest. So I put Steph Curry right up there with him. But can Steph Curry put a team on his back and, march a team to the finals? I mean, no, I just don't think so. I mean, you've seen what's happened when it's been hit, when he's been the focal point, with Klay Thompson not being there, with Kevin Durant moving on. I know he's played well and he's been scoring points, but there's more to basketball than just scoring points. Occasionally you have to get a stop. And let me tell you, Steph Curry doesn't help much with that a lot of the time. So, he is an excellent offensive player. He's one of the greatest shooters of all time. He's definitely an all-star and a big time, max contract player. But, he's the kind of guy, in my opinion, that needs superstars, at least one, maybe two, to make a big splash and make a big run in the playoffs. So that's why I think you've seen them struggle. And I know they've been playing well recently, but they're still at the bottom, trying to fight their way into the playoffs. I mean, right now I think they're a game or a half game ahead of the Grizzlies for that last playoff spot. And Steph's been playing pretty much the whole year, and that's Steph's team, and Steph's team's 8th. So it is what it is, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know that. But I'm just saying the narrative of him, the way people perceive him. Somewhere along the line, he lost that, for lack of a better term, cute underdog, that the man of the people. I remember when he first came up, I remember watching a video on YouTube where he actually showed up at this kid's party and played pickup basketball with him.
Yeah.
And things like that. So it's like, I don't know. I think he
went Hollywood. He went Hollywood. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And he should, he wants to, he wants to expand his brand, and he wants to try and make money and do all that. But in my opinion, he's not the difference maker, like LeBron is, or even Joel Embiid. I mean, he's just not a guy that you can put an entire team on his back and win a championship. But he got a lot of credit for those championships they did win when they had 4 All-Stars.
All right, and we got Bob Picozzi in the bullpen. We'll bring him up right now. Getting ready to talk about a little MLB. How you doing, Bob?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing real well. Got a lot to go over with you tonight. I'm going to start out, Major League Baseball. Before we get into the Mets and Yankees specifically, so far there's a lot of rumbling about Major League Baseball with the fact that the most of the averages seem to be around the Mendoza line. We've had 4 no-hitters, so many strikeouts, not enough home runs, not enough manufactured runs. Bob, you and I kind of grew up in the same generation, and I scratch my head. What do you think of the state of Major League Baseball right now?
Well, the sport got its hooks into me when I was 7. So I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it, but they can't do it for someone like me. I mean, if you think back to the big strike in '81 where we lost 1/3 of the season, a lot of fans, including my best friend, the guy who's probably been sitting next to me for maybe 600 Yankee games in the last 45 years since I've known him. He was so angry, he made a decision that when the season resumed, he wasn't going to go to any games the rest of the year. As soon as I heard that the strike had been settled, I immediately set about to pick out the games that I wanted to attend, to refund the tickets for the games that were lost. So they'll never screw it up for me. The shifts have a lot to do with that, the defensive shifts. You see guys make solid contact and they ground the ball right to a fielder who's, maybe 15, even 20 feet on the outfield grass, and it's an easy throw to first to get them out. But they literally play home run ball. They swing. I remember, my all-time favorite is Mickey Mantle, and long after he retired, a woman was interviewing him, and I guess she was a little naive, and she asked him, "Did you ever go up to the plate trying to hit a home run?" And Mick went, "Every time." So now, not everyone's Mickey Mantle though. So now you have guys swinging from their shoes, and it's home run or strikeout, and the number of strikeouts is astounding. I don't follow it that closely to know the numbers, but I imagine we have many more strikeouts than we have hits. Is that correct?
Yeah,
that is true. That is true.
So, last night's Yankee game now that was an old-fashioned pitching. Garrett Cole is really, really good.
Yeah, yes.
But to answer your question, it's not going to ruin it for me. I'm still going to watch. I don't think it's as entertaining because there isn't as much action, and a lot of times when there are games where there are a lot of runs scored, it's not necessarily because the pitching's great. It's just guys just they don't go the other way, and they try to hit home runs instead of going up the middle. I almost sobbed. Started weeping last week when in a big situation, Giancarlo Stanton just went with the pitch and grounded a ball hard through the wide open cavernous hole on the right side of the infield.
Yeah.
RBI single. You don't see enough of that. So I think that's probably accounts for what you're seeing.
Yeah. And Bob, do you think that the pitching's just gotten that much better, or do you think that, the specialization and, bringing in the big time bullpens and having the lefties versus the lefties and all that stuff, do you think the pitching's got that much better, or you think the hitting's just got worse?
I think the bullpens are probably deeper. There are more choices. Going back 10 years, 20 years, if you went to like the fourth guy in the bullpen, that was the underbelly of the bullpen. Well, that, Tampa Bay is probably the classic example. They have a bunch of guys who throw hard and they throw them out there. I think what has really hurt the offenses is that they don't let batters see a pitcher for the third time. And that's clearly the philosophy of a lot of managers. No matter how well the starting pitcher is pitching, they don't want him facing the lineup a third time around. So then you bring in someone, who throws 98 and has a little bend to it. And it is harder. So the pitching's deeper, to answer your questions. I don't know that we have more good pitchers, but we have fewer bad ones, put it that way.
Yeah.
Something that came to mind to me last week was when the Mets fired their batting coach, Chili Davis, and they also fired their assistant batting coach. And I was like, they have an assistant batting coach as well as a batting coach. I mean, so much of this stuff, is it overcoaching? They got worried about velo. They were worried about launch angle. I mean, one thing I brought up to somebody the other day, and he scratched his head, and I may have something in me. I was thinking too deep, but this generation, Bob, you and I were in this area. We didn't have batting cages, baseball academies, and things like that. Are these kids spending too much time growing up in batting cages, hitting off the tee, rather than live pitching? Like, I used to have to get my father to throw to me, and he would say, "You better throw swing for something close because my arm won't be hanging for that long." So you learn to hit a bad ball. I mean, these kids are looking too much for the groove pitch.
Well, I don't know if it's that as much as it has become such an analytical sport. The sabermetrics, you mentioned the launch angles and the exit velo. I mean, those things don't make any difference to me. But when you talk to people who believe in it, they do feel that the consistency of an exit velo is going to pay dividends down the road. So, a guy I mentioned Stanton before. I mean, I don't think anyone in baseball hits the ball harder than Stanton. His problem is, all the times he doesn't make contact. He strikes out a lot. But there's much more. You see guys in the dugout between bats looking at iPads, looking at their last at bat. I mean, you didn't see major leaguers doing that when we were growing up.
No.
There weren't iPads. So, I mean, it's all in the context of trying to improve. And I think the defense is ahead of the offense at this stage in Major League Baseball, both with the shifting. The shifting clearly works. It clearly works. And, and the way to beat the shift is to go the other way. But I guess if you're the other team and you have a guy like Stanton, if he's trying to hit a ground ball through the right side of the infield, he's probably doing what you want. You'd rather take your chances with that than hitting the ball 450 feet.
No, I agree. And, as we stand right now, the Mets, our Mets, Joe, are actually in first place. And, they're 18-13 overall. They're actually doing a lot better than I anticipated. And, I don't know whether or not they can keep it up. But Bob, is it surprising to you that the Mets are in first place at this point? You think they keep it up?
I don't think it's a great division. So it isn't a great I guess it's surprising to me in that two of their starters are out. And, one of them, Syndergaard, is really good. When is he supposed to be back? Is he supposed to be back?
They're after the All-Star break. They're anticipating late July, early August.
Yeah.
And, of course, the drill. You have no idea how good he's going to be. First, he'll probably be better next year than he will be this year. But he was a really good pitcher before he got hurt. So you add him to that rotation. And then, this is all presuming that DeGrom comes back soon and, pitches at the same incredibly high level that he's pitched at for the last couple of years. But, yeah, I guess I'm a little surprised. But, again, I don't think that division is very good. It's still early. I mean, Washington is now 5.5 games out. So that's a little bit of a surprise because I think they're a pretty good team. But that's a competitive division. The one that, it's early in the season, and I'm a big believer in the adage that the baseball season is a marathon, not a sprint. And I think, the cream will rise to the top. But the American League Central is god-awful. I mean, it's May 13th, and one team, the Twins, are already 9 games out, and the Tigers are 10 games out. So those other, I don't think Kansas City's any good either. But the White Sox and the Indians are going to be able to beat up on those teams. And I would think there's a really good chance one of the 2 wildcard berths will come out of the Central because their schedule is going to be much easier playing those 18, games within the division against 2 really lousy teams. And you do not have that in the National League East.
That's true.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, when DeGrom went down this week, I was watching the game, and of course, my heart fluttered with that. It seems to me, he had that great start 2 starts ago where he went the complete game, pitched a phenomenal game, 15 strikeouts, and then the next game he was a little bit weaker, and then this game, he then became the muscle problem. And he tries to go in this game, and you could tell something wasn't right with him. You think it's a combination of, like you said, they want to get to the bullpen because they don't want him to have to face somebody third time around. But when they do stretch him out, he's not ready to be stretched out.
Well, DeGrom's the exception. I mean, if I'm a manager, I'm not going to take him out of the game because the order's coming up for the third time because I'd much rather have him in there than anybody else on the Mets staff. I think he's the best pitcher in baseball. Although, Cole
very good
this year is pitching at that level, but DeGrom's been at that level. This is at least the 3rd season in a row. I wouldn't worry about DeGrom. I mean, I would possibly worry about him a little bit physically, but the good news is it appears to be an issue with his side and not his arm, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's a blessing. However, those things can take a while to heal. I mean, we see that's the injury that you see batters have all the time, the oblique. And I guess it's I imagine it's not any easier to pitch with a sore oblique than it is to bat with it. So I hope he's okay. I mean, I'm that rare New York fan that I don't dislike the other team. It's that way in all of the sports. I don't dislike the other team. Although the Islanders, as a Rangers fan, the Islanders are a little bit tough to take.
Yeah, I can imagine. I go back to those days when the Sutter brothers and Trottier and those guys were miserable.
Yeah, they were great. Those teams in the early 80s, they were among the best teams I've ever seen in following hockey for probably like 50 years. But I don't dislike the Mets at all. But as a baseball fan, I don't want to see DeGrom hurt. And I really hope when we have the Subway Series, I really hope that we get a matchup between Cole and DeGrom. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, that would be really fun to watch. And the Mets in the offseason were trying to get their offensive production up and went out and brought in Lindor, gave him $341 million, and he's batting .202 with 2 home runs. And eventually I think things will get better for him. But why the slow start, Bob? What do you think's going on with him at this point?
I don't know. It's it's some guys don't react great when they come to the big city. There's a big difference between playing in New York and in Cleveland because of the expectation level. And when you're a guy, it's almost easier, I think, maybe to make it with the Yankees because they have so much more talent on paper. So even let's say Stanton got off to a bad start in his first year, really didn't. I mean, people forget his first year, he played 158 games. That was the year the Judge was hurt a lot, and he played in the outfield a lot that year. So
he played over 40 home runs.
Yeah, and he drove in 100, I think. But what I was going to say, if he got off to the sort of start that Lindor did in his first year as a Yankee, the fans would have been all over him. But it wouldn't have mattered as much because the lineup is so deep that they have other guys that can make up for it. The Mets do not have that luxury, however. So I think he'll be fine. I do think they overpaid for him, but I think if you're the Mets in the situation you're in, you probably had to overpay to get a guy like that. To sell yourself to the fans and to, and to try to become a contender. I think he's a very good player. I don't know that I've ever thought he's a great player.
Right.
I agree with you.
Bob, we got to get to the Yankees, but I wanted to bring up a subject because, of course, last week there was Lindor and McNeil. Supposedly either they saw a rat or they were fighting down in the locker room. And Henry Rachel here made a big deal out of it. And I'm like, I grew up when the Oakland A's hated each other, and then the Yankees hate each other, and then Keith Hernandez and Strawberry be fighting. I mean, it happens. I don't know why you're trying to make a big deal out of it. What did you think about it?
I dismiss those things. I mean, there's so many things to pay attention and follow in sports, and I follow the things I'm interested in, and that's something. I don't even think I read the stories about it because it was of no interest to me. It's like I equate it to like following social media. I'm on social media, but I just do a pretty good job of just scrolling past the stuff that is of no interest to me. So that was a nothing burger for me.
All right, to the Yankees.
One more question before we get away from that. You guys are Mets fans. Do you think DeGrom's already the second greatest pitcher in Mets history? Do you think he's already established himself as a better pitcher than Dwight Gooden was? I don't mean when Gooden was at his very top, but the problem with Doc is he didn't stay at that level very long, for obvious reasons. But do you think DeGrom has already established himself as the second greatest pitcher in Mets history?
Yes,
I do. I think so. This the longevity and the amount of time he's been on top. And, I think of how many years he's been one of the best pitchers in the National League. And I don't think you can say that for anybody else that's been there for that team in New York.
And the other thing about Dwight, nothing to take away from his greatness, because, his first 2 or 3 years, he was as good as it was, especially his second year. But it did help to have a Hall of Fame catcher there, Gary Carter, to guide you through. Keith Hernandez was as much a coach in the field. So he was surrounded by a lot more talent. I mean, when you think, I saw a stat where DeGrom has given up either 2 runs or 1 run or less and had either no decision or lost 33 games so far.
It's unbelievable. That's incredible. But he's got a ways to go to become the greatest, because the franchise, that is a plateau that I don't think anyone will. Tom Seaver is perhaps my favorite. I mean, my favorite. When you ask me baseball players I like, you'd get a more revealing answer if we just eliminated the Yankees, because they're my favorite team. And if you ask me who are the greatest, my favorite players in my life, I don't know which order I'd put it in. Mays, Aaron, Koufax, and Seaver. That's the high. Gibson also. That's how highly I regard Seaver. And I realized when he passed away, he was your team's Mantle.
Yeah.
He was your Mantle. And when Mickey played early, for 1 year at least, he had DiMaggio on the team. And then for nearly his whole career, he had Yogi, and nearly his whole team, he had Whitey, Hall of Famers. And of course, none of that with Seaver. I mean, he truly is easily the greatest player in the history of that franchise.
And the cruel thing was that the dementia robbed us of seeing him his last years, because he was such an engaging personality, such an intelligent man. I mean, he was one of the great interviewers and a great broadcaster himself, that to not be able to see him as well because, they had to shelter him away from everybody. So you never got to say goodbye to him, really.
Right. I saw his 300th win. I was in the ballpark.
Oh, yeah, we with the White Sox.
Yeah, I mean, I went because it was Phil Rizzuto Day.
Yep.
I got my tickets, early in the season when it was Phil Rizzuto Day, and then, just luck of the draw. And if you recall, he pitched all 9 innings.
Yeah.
I think he had a 2-run lead, and Don Baylor was either the tying run or the winning run at the plate with 2 outs in the ninth. And when Baylor hit the ball, at first it looked like it had a chance. And of course, how long does it take for the ball to get from the bat to the left fielder's glove? And during that time, I couldn't decide where I wanted the ball to go. I mean, I'm never going to root for the Yankees to lose, but also I realized I was not only witnessing history, but I was witnessing history recorded by an athlete I really, really admire. So the way it ended was okay with me.
And if I remember right, the great picture of him as he's looking at the outfield and his hands are on his knees and he's looking up, just kind of praying for the ball not to make it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And Fisk was the catcher, another Hall of Famer. So, that was a great moment. Too bad it couldn't have come in a Mets uniform.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you, Mr. Grant. But when you look at your Yankees or the Yankees this year, they made some adjustments in the offseason, nothing really major. Did they have to? Do you like Kluber so far, what you've seen? What do you think about this version of the Yankee team?
Well, in the offseason, I had considerable doubts about what they were doing with the pitching staff. They clearly decided to walk away from Tanaka. I don't really think they made any attempt to sign him. And at the time, I thought that was a bad decision. But Cashman's justification was, for the amount of money it would have taken us to sign him, we have 2 starting pitchers. We acquired 2 starting pitchers. One of them was in a trade, but I'm talking about the salaries. Kluber and Tyon. And, the jury is out on both. So there were 2 huge question marks, those guys. And obviously Herman was a big question mark because he missed an entire season. Then plus, how is a guy going to react to, the thing that he went through, albeit, it was his fault. I mean, he created the situation. So you had 3 huge question marks. And then, Montgomery is a question mark. So you had one, most decidedly not a question mark. And then I figured their whole season would be determined by how those question marks are answered. So to answer your question, I think if Kluber stays healthy, I think he'll be fine. You already look, his ERA has come right back down. He's pitched really well the last couple of times out. I think Herman will also be fine. I don't worry about him. The jury is out on Tyon. But, at some point, just like we were talking about Syndergaard, the Yankees hope to get Severino back.
Yeah.
Right.
June, early July. And he was a really, really good pitcher a couple of years ago, and he's still very young. So if he can be, just a fraction of what he was before, they'll be okay there. And then they're going to get Britton back, so they'll have a deep bullpen. So I think they'll be fine. But it's great to be able to trot out that number 45 every 5 days.
Oh, there's no doubt. And, the bullpen's actually been doing a better job as of late, but, that's supposed to be one of the Yankees' strengths. And, I think that it probably can be. What do you think about the strength of the bullpen at this point?
Well, it's interesting. You look at the bullpen they had a couple of years ago. It was an embarrassment of riches. You had Chapman, you had Britton, you had Betances.
Yeah.
When he was really good.
Yeah.
You had Canely, who I think it was he had a bad regular season 2017. But, when they made that run losing to the Astros in Game 7 in the LCS that year, he was fantastic in the postseason. And then you bring in Ottavino, which looked like a really good move. And now you look, they didn't clearly they moved on from Betances, and it looks like it was a wise decision.
Yeah.
Right.
I thought it was a bad decision at the time. I thought it was incredibly disloyal to him, but looked like they knew what they were doing. And don't ask me what happened to Ottavino. I don't really think he's pitching substantially better for the Red Sox. So, he had a really good regular season his first year with the Yankees, then he was awful in the postseason. And then last year he was terrible all season. They didn't even, they were afraid to use him in the postseason. So, you have different guys. I mean, you still have Chapman, who looks like he's as good as ever so far. He hasn't given up an earned run yet.
No.
Britton will be back. I think at the end of May they're expecting him. They signed O'Day, but he's hurt now. So he was pitching pretty well. But I think, to answer your question, I think it's a little shaky. I mean, Chapman, no problem. Britton, no problem. And, and I think Chad Green, I don't worry about him. But I don't know about Litke. He's pitching pretty well so far. And Justin Wilson started well, and he had a really couple of rough outings. So I don't know what you have there. It looks like he's got a really good arm. And I think Loizaga has a chance to be a really good relief pitcher. And he has been good. He had one terrible outing the other day, but he's been good. So, to answer your question, I think they'll be okay. You look at how the starters weren't going, other than Cole, weren't going deep into the game at the beginning of the season when they went through that. Now they are. They've had quite a string of starts where they've given up three or fewer earned runs. So it's all related. The bullpen, when you have to use them less, they're going to be more effective when they don't have to eat up as many innings.
Yeah, nothing helps a bullpen more than a couple starters pitching deep into the game.
Right.
They've started showing some flashes and moving on up from stumbling on the block. Of course, Judge, Gleyber Torres, and Sanchez starting to show some flashes. Can they keep it up? Or like Gary Sanchez, I mean, can he ever get back to what he was that rookie year at the plate, the consistency, do you think?
Well, and then also he was good. He was up there, as I recall, a couple of months as a rookie, and then really good the next year.
Yeah.
He's been terrible since. I mean, then the third year, I think his power numbers were good, but his batting average and OPS were way down. And then last year he was awful. Answer your question, no, I don't think. I think what you see is what he is. He was, and it was like the opposite of a meteoric rise. And I don't know, I don't know how long, that they have to say the things they're saying about him. And it's not like the guy behind him is the next coming of, Pudge Rodriguez.
Right.
He's a good defensive catcher, and, he's average offensively at best. So, no, I say no on Sanchez. Torres is the biggest mystery, because I thought on the basis of his first couple of years, especially 2 years ago when he hit 38 home runs, I think he was a budding superstar. Yeah. But, I don't know how much stock you put into that disjointed 60-game season last year. It's off to a start this year. He is hitting better. So I think Torres will be okay. I don't think he's ever going to be a good defensive shortstop. No. I think he's going to be average at best, and he will cost you at times. Judge, I think if he's healthy, he'll be fine. I don't know that we're going to see the guy we saw in his first 2 years, who looked like a indestructible force. And they have a tough decision to make on him. They don't want to see him. They'd like to buy some time, and not have him go to arbitration. But he's got to produce. I think the biggest issues with Judge and Stanton is their ability to stay on the field. I think if they stay on the field, they'll be fine. I don't know about Hicks. Hicks has been a huge disappointment.
Yeah, I think his back is pretty much shot. When you talk about Judge, and I hate to put it in the Mets' hand, but I worry so much about Pete Alonso going on that same kind of parallel path, not injury prone or anything, but their first year was so spectacular. that the fans think that 50 home runs is easily attained every year, and it's one of the hardest things to do still in sports. I mean, even in home run happy Major League Baseball right now, you don't see a lot of 50 home run totals at the end of the year. So I mean, I just hope that Alonso doesn't try to always duplicate that year and just try to become a better player every year. It can't be done, I don't think.
Yeah, well, the only few guys can do it, that's for sure. And I don't know that he's one of them. The guy, the one guy we witnessed who was just phenomenal for at least the first 10 years of his career was Pujols.
Yeah.
I mean, the first 10 years of his career. I mean, if you ask me who's the greatest player ever at each position, first base is tough. I never thought I would say that. But, sadly, Gehrig's career was relatively short. Pujols' career has already been much longer, although the last 10 years, the productivity has gone like this. But you look at the entire body of work, he's got nearly 670 home runs. Isn't he like in the top 5 in career RBIs already?
Yeah.
I believe so.
Yeah.
And he won 3 MVP awards. So that's a tough choice. Who's the greatest first baseman ever? If you took it on, the average numbers per season, if you wanted to look at it that way, it's Gehrig, no brainer. But you look over the entire resume of the career, you could argue very strongly that Pujols is the greatest first baseman. It's sad to see it end like it ended.
That's the saddest thing about sports is too many of our stars and our heroes don't get to walk away into the sunset and to cheers. It's usually with their heads bowed and we wondering why did you stick around so long at the farm or ranch, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. So anyways, hey Bob, we can't thank you enough. We want to have you on again. Fantastic talking to you. Maybe maybe in a month or two we'll bring back and we'll review the Mets and Yankees and catch up again.
Okay, be glad to do it, guys.
All right, thank you very much. Have a good weekend.
Bye. Same to you.
See you, Bob.
That was Bob Bacozzi, really the dean of Connecticut sportscasters. Who really I grew up listening to Bob both on news and announcing games, and not a classier guy around. Fantastic person.
Guy knows stuff. We had him on for the NCAA tournament, and he broke us down some basketball, and here we are, right in the middle of May, and he's ripping apart baseball for us. So it's good to have Bob back with us.
He's one of those guys. There's so many, and I don't want to put down the new guys that are coming on the air and taking over because it's a new day, but Bob Bacozzi understood that he wasn't the game. He was announcing a game. Too many of some of these announcers today want to be part of the action rather than paint the picture and let just give you what they see and let the stars be the stars. They want to be stars themselves. So
There's no doubt about it. They don't make them like they used to, buddy.
No, not at all. We got about 7 minutes left. Anything on your mind, Nate?
Well, I thought it was interesting that old A-Rod's back in the news, and he's now going to be purchasing the Minnesota Timberwolves. So you got Jeter down there owning the Marlins, and now I guess A-Rod didn't end up buying the Mets.
So he's moved to basketball? I mean, I guess he couldn't do a worse job, owning the T-Wolves than, the previous regime. I mean, they've been the joke of the NBA for years. And, maybe something new will shake it up. But I just think it's funny that, we now that shows you how old we are. Now our former guys we used to watch play are now all owning the teams. That also shows you where the money's been going, because it's been going from the owner's hands and being handed to the players who now make these $300-400 million contracts, almost routinely. And that starts making it where you can be in the game to buy a ball club.
So you're saying that his breakup with J-Lo sent him to the Wolves?
he's not the first guy to break up with J-Lo. That's
God, she's got more diamonds on her hand than from guys and being mined in any mine in America. But the only thing I'd say about A-Rod is I don't see what he brings to the table in the NBA. I mean, I understand he'll be around people. He can call up Shaq on his cell phone. He can talk to Charles Barkley. He can get involved and put together a team. But it's kind of like counterintuitive to me. I mean, it's like because he does know baseball. I mean,
I actually like him on the MLB network. I would, but he doesn't bother me.
See, sometimes he comes across as he's trying so not to be arrogant that it comes off as phony to me. I don't know. It just doesn't work for me. But maybe because I don't like him at all. But
that may started it off for you.
You know me. It's hard to change my opinion on anything. But I mean, if you're going to put together a group, $1.5 billion, and why not buy somebody like the Pittsburgh Pirates or Kansas City or the Reds? One of these small you can get that type of money, infuse that money into the Pirates, the Reds, or the old Godfather saying, make an offer they can't refuse, and give those people in Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Kansas City hope that they can put something together and maybe get to Kansas City won a World Series. Pittsburgh has been in the playoffs a couple of times and they had to be satisfied with that. They haven't won since '79. Cincinnati hasn't won since '90. And
90, they didn't even come close.
Right.
Since 1990.
So,
in fact, if you do well on the team, they ship you out.
If you're gonna do something, put together a package. Go to whoever owns these teams and say, look, obviously you don't want to infuse the money that's going to be needed to be competitive. I can do it, but I mean, then again, you have the old boy network in Major League Baseball who maybe doesn't want it. I know they kept Mark Cuban out when Cuban wanted to buy Pittsburgh, and that alone is a crime. I mean, Cuban wouldn't go cheap. Cuban would bring in the right people. And it's always good when you have more competition. It never
he won a world championship with the Dallas Mavericks, man. I mean, you got to get whether you love or hate the guy, he won a world championship with the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, that was pretty impressive in my opinion.
Your job is, as much as I'm not, I hate to be on the Steinbrenner side with this, but your job as an owner of a team is to put together in some way, manner, shape, or form the best competitive team you can. And if you're not doing that, then get out of the game. Don't even attempt to be in the game, because all you're doing is you're fleecing your fans, because you're going to make money off their beer and hot dog purchase and their tickets, but you're not giving them back anything for their money.
Right, and that's the problem, in my opinion, with today's sports. Is in some instances the fans they put up with it. Even in Cincinnati, the fans are so loyal that the Reds can suck and not make the playoffs for 5-6 years, but these people will still go and fill that place up on opening day, and spend money and buy tickets and buy souvenirs and subscribe to the Fox Sports package, or Bally Sports as it's called now. People still watch and they still pay money, and so they get away with not even caring whether they win or not.
You know why? One of the great memories of my life is the first time my father took me. We went to Yankee Stadium when I was 9 years old. It's still something that burned into my mind. And every time I went with him, whether it with him or with my brother or with my friends, that's what you get from us. That's why we're Pavlov's dog when it comes to that. It's, even though we may be upset with our team, it's that camaraderie with your friends. It's being with, your biggest hero, your father at the ballpark. You can't replace those memories. So that's just a lucky byproduct for them that they get to get away and give us that.
That's true, but if you don't care about winning, I'm not going to support you. I'm sorry. I gave up. The New York Jets organization has pissed me off to no end, and I have a hard time, buying any more Jets shirts because first, I already washed my car with half of them to begin with, and B,
I'm not giving them any more of my money to waste on Sam frickin' Darnold. It's just it gets old after a while, and I see through the gray screen in front of my eyes about the people that could care less whether or not their team wins or not, as long as they're putting bucks in their pocket.
Well, on Monday, we don't have a guest yet. We're working on something. Next Thursday, an exciting guest. I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, we're going to have a Hall of Famer, J.J. Fadden, who played at Wilkes University there in Pennsylvania, was a Hall of Fame defensive lineman, 3-time All-American, played professional football, actually over in Europe and for a Danish team, and was a part-time coach as well, and then went on to coach in the Ivy League, which is a league that we pay attention to here on this show. So we're going to have JJ on and talk to him about his football playing career as well as his coaching career, where he coached at Hobart, he coached at Northeastern, he coached at Wilkes, and then he also coached in the Ivy League at Cornell. So we'll dig into that with him, as playing, coaching, and then also what he's doing now, as he's a businessman. He owns his own business, which we'll let him talk about on Thursday.
And also, we are going to take a look at the NFL schedules next week. They came out. We'll take a look at the games we think we should be paying attention to. Hey, you and I started talking about Monday Night Football. You've got a higher opinion than I do, but we'll talk about that. Plus, the first week, speaking of the Jets, they managed to find a way to put the Jets visiting Carolina.
Wow.
The Who Care Bowl.
Yeah, let me tell you about how many people will be watching that one. Not many, but what, we'll see. You know what? It's going to come down to this, this BYU kid. I mean, can this kid play? Because he's going to have to play. They don't have any veteran that's going to, open up on day one and show this kid the way. I can't believe it. And this is a thing that we can talk about on a later show, but some of these teams with their quarterback population, it's a freaking joke.
Yeah.
Especially with the 17 game season, you're going to need somebody to go in there at some point that's got some experience and that can at least keep you in a ball game. And, you look at the Jets quarterback population and, they got this guy they just drafted and that's it. I mean, these other two guys, nothing against them, but James Morgan and Mike White, I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, they could be standing next to me in the grocery store and I wouldn't know who the hell either one of these guys were. And I sure as hell wouldn't ask them to go play catch. So, I'm not sure what they're doing there. You got to go and get a veteran who can at least come in and win you a couple of games if Wilson falls off the reservation the first 4 or 5 weeks of the year, or if he gets hurt. I mean, this guy is not a big dude. He's probably, they list him at 6'2". He's not. He might be 6'1" if he's lucky. And, he barely weighs 200 pounds. So, one big hit.
Well, not to jump in and give another team I hate some props, but I hear Dallas Cowboys are bringing in plenty of potential backups for Dak. At least they're trying to get somebody in there. I mean, the Jets are going to sit on their hands so long that all the good ones are going to be taken. So,
yeah, look what they did last year. Everybody ripped them for going out and spending $6 million to get Andy Dalton. Well, hell, I bet you they were real glad they had him when Dak broke his ankle out of his skin and was laying on the turf. Andy Dalton came in real handy, and no, they didn't, make the playoffs, but that wasn't really Andy Dalton's fault. That defense was one of the worst in NFL history. So it was a very good move, I thought, by Jerry. And, some of these other teams, and in particular, I've got to say the Tennessee Titans, what the hell are they doing? I mean, they got, they got this guy who's actually had 2 decent seasons in Tannehill back there and nobody behind him. They don't have one guy that can come in and win a ball game. And then they got Derrick Henry or bust at running back. I mean, if Derrick Henry or Tannehill goes down, the Titans are in big trouble, in my opinion. And I think, those aren't the only 2 teams, the Jets and the Titans, but I would say that their quarterback situation is probably the worst behind their starter.
That's for sure. All right, people, thank you for tuning in tonight. We thank Bob Picozzi again for giving us a half hour and coming through a lot of good stuff. Going to have him back again as many times until he'll be willing to come down. Everybody have a great weekend. It is the Safety and the Sports Writer with Knoxville, Nate and Joe. Have a great weekend. Hey, good news we got from the CDC. The masks are coming off. Maybe that means we're getting closer and closer to getting back to normal lives, especially with football getting closer and closer, at least training camps and stuff. Maybe we will have football back to what we love next year. Everybody have a great weekend, and we will see you next week.
All right. We'll see you on Monday. Hope everybody tunes back in.